Hey, this is your host Chris. My co-host Rob is on vacation this week, hunting down an actual changeling, so this will be a solo show. Welcome to this episode of Crappy Reviews, the channel all about helping you shed some light on your favorite shows. To keep up to date with what's coming up, be sure to follow us on Twitter at crappy_reviews and Reddit at crappyreviews2023. And if you enjoy what you hear, take a second to hit the like button, so we and the algorithm, the ultimate wise one, know we're on the right track. I hope you enjoy the episode, and let's get straight into it. Episode 6 Aftermath, I'm giving it an 8.5. This was one of my favorite episodes so far. It successfully provided us with answers, more mysteries to chew on, additional lore, and did so while keeping the tension up throughout the episode. This was an Emma-centric episode, giving us insight on what she's been doing since her disappearance, her time on the island with the Wise Ones, and Cal was not kidding when she said that she was a handful. Both Apollo and Emma had almost identical experiences, down to the drowning scenes and the flashbacks, which for me really solidified how strong the connection is between these two. But we see this episode open in the aftermath of episode 3, from Emma's perspective, what happened inside baby Brian's nursery. And what we get is a pile of soil and a tree branch left over in the crib. No body, no remains. Nothing that would make me think she'd be charged with murder of baby Brian. If anything, I think she'd be charged with kidnapping because there's no body left over to associate her with murder. With that said, when Apollo wakes up in his basement or in the building's basement in episode 3 and the landlord wakes him up, the landlord tells him that he discovered the crime scene. The smell was horrible. He found Apollo chained up and then made his way into baby Brian's room, and he saw the body and then had said prayers for him and Apollo ever since. So the question is, did the landlord actually see a body? Is the landlord telling the truth? Is the landlord even the landlord? Irregardless, once she gets down the fire escape and tosses her phone after reading the text, presumably from kindergarten, she just levitates. She just levitates down the alley. So this brings us to our next point, Emma's potential powers. We've seen Emma use powers a few times now. During episode 3, when she chains Apollo up, we see her open and close doors without touching them. She kind of levitates into the door frame and then Ring Girl disjointedly walks all the way through the living room into the kitchen. And then we see her put her hand in fire with no physical response, grab a boiling, scalding hot teapot from the bottom, still with no physical response. She kind of Ring Girl her ways back to baby Brian's room and then just really quickly disappears and closes the door without actually doing it herself. So we had some powers in that scene alone. Now in episode 6, we see her levitate, and at the end of the episode, as she's rowing away from the island, we see this blue aura around her and a little bit in her eyes. Now I've heard the argument made that this is just the transition point between the glamour magic and the two realms. But we don't see this blue aura happen at any other time. Not when Emma comes and goes from the island the prior times, and not when William/kindergarten and Apollo show up later on after Emma leaves. It seems to be a distinct aura just for Emma. And as her powers seem to grow, and her confidence and her determination and her fury, it looks like there's more of a visual and physical embodiment of her powers happening at the end of this scene. And it kind of leans back into the story that Cal was reading with Alice in Wonderland, this transition from caterpillar to butterfly, growing into the person she's supposed to become, finding herself, maybe her true self, similar to kindergarten, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. And Cal's look as she's sailing away just has this smirk, this glint of she's aware, maybe she sees the magic around her and seems to think that she's going to be okay in the next part of her journey as she goes and looks for baby Brian in the maple trees, in the forest in Little Norway. So at this point, the question's not whether or not Emma has powers. The question is when she got them. Did she always have the powers, or did she get them post-Brazil? My answer is I think she's always had powers. Based on the evidence that we have now, that's what I'm going with. I feel like after going back and watching the episode where Kim tells the story of their childhood and the house burns down, there was just too many things that didn't make sense. And now that we see that Kim had more knowledge about the wise ones and seemed to understand what was happening, she knew how to signal them with her phone light and pushed Emma overboard as if she's well aware that these women are going to come and save her and it wasn't a big deal, that she's already in the loop when it comes to some of this witchcraft stuff. When she talks to Apollo in the restaurant and when Apollo hands her the check, which, fun fact, the check was dated Friday the 13th, but it was still an odd thing to say. It led me to think that she knew more about what was going on and hoped it turned out differently, or the plan didn't quite go as expected. And the only way she would have known that plan is to have more connection with the wise ones and more knowledge of the organization. So I think that Kim knows a lot more than she's saying. And I think that Kim and Emma's mother may have had some sort of witchcraft going on. It was an odd scene in the recollection of the fire. The whole thing seemed off. Emma's mother said to her father she doesn't want them to be orphans.
Go, let her go!
I can't leave you orphans.
Almost letting us know that she's aware Emma's father was going to come back in because he clearly could get both those girls out, as he did, no big deal. They could have all left, but Emma's mother makes the point to say, I don't want them to be orphans, as if she's aware he's going to come back in. And I'm not really sure why she would know that. Then when they get out there, none of the firefighters or the police officers run up to them. Now they're there for a minute, and none of them run up to check on things or grab the kids or anything like that, for that matter. And then when her father walks back to the door, you can see the firemen and the police officers and other people looking at the house to tell them, how they're going to put the fire out and what's going on. And they don't notice that he's there. No one reacts to it. Nothing happens. This guy just walks back up to his house in a blaze, and everyone just seems totally fine with it. Then when he grabs the doorknob, I get the same vibe that I got when Emma grabbed the teapot from underneath in episode 3 during the killing of the changeling scene when she locked up Apollo. Again, as if somebody else was in control, or there's some other powers, or something else is amiss. And the person I kind of point to in this is Kim. I feel like Kim is aware of what's going on, and that maybe this memory isn't all what she said it is. She just kind of revealed a little more information than the first time, but that's not really what happened. Maybe her parents weren't in a fire at all, and it was all glamour. It was all some sort of memory magic. It was all just a lie. It doesn't really track, at least for me, from Kim's perspective. Not to mention, Boone's Mill only has, I think, 256 or 252 people. So this is a super, super small town. And they had like 2 pretty large fire trucks there for 252 people. It just seemed like there was a lot going on. And for a town that close knit and have that few people, you would expected a different response to them coming out of the house and a lot of other things happening, and none of that took place. So I get the feeling that there's already witchcraft in the house anyway, whether it was Kim or her mother or her father, that there was already something happening. And just Emma as a child seemed to have this, I don't know, disconnected feel from her mother and from everyone. So for me, I think that there's always been some witchcraft, and what we saw there in that memory is maybe completely false, but at best pretty skewed with some sort of magic that made her forget or remember differently. And she might have kind of clean slated that memory, so Emma didn't have the information that she is kind of getting into now as the powers start to come back. And maybe that was part of her third wish, to remember more or to be more like her mother, because she also brings up under the bed that she wanted to be the perfect mother, and she already had the perfect example. Now, whether that meant her own mother, whether that meant Kim as the surrogate mother after 18, I don't know. But if she did wish to be more like her mother in the third wish, and her mother was a witch, then what we're seeing now might just kind of be the repercussions of the washerwoman saying, "Be careful what you wish for." Speaking of what the washerwoman had said, I think there might be another connection between what she had said to Emma and a symbol that might exist on North Brother Island. And if you can see it from the top view, it looks like there's the beginnings, or at least part of, a three spiral symbol. And a three spiral symbol can look pretty much the same with small variations between different cultures. But interestingly enough, it's Celtic, Greek, and Neolithic, and they all kind of mean the same general thing. In Celtic culture, it means triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone. And in Greek culture, you're going to get youth, maturity, and old age. And in Neolithic culture, we're going to see sun, afterlife, and possibly spiritual growth. And what the Warshwoman had tells Emma when she's making her wish is that she should wish for now, for after, and for beyond. And I'm not saying this is a tit for tat perfect comparison, but that symbol, the three spiral symbol, is used in witchcraft, and the different versions of it kind of tie in pretty well with what the Washerwoman, who's also a witch, had said. So when I saw it the first time, I kind of went back again, because after looking at symbols for some other shows, it kind of piqued my interest, and it might be something to look into. With that said, if we go further into Brazil, I noticed another connection, and this one I'm pretty sure about, between episodes 5 and 6. In episode 6, we see Emma go out on her own into the woods trying to match up the stick that she had got from baby Brian's crib after she did away with the changeling, and to match up the leaf that she had gotten a drawing from her newfound friend in the compound. And as she ventures out into the woods, she goes through more ruins that are almost identical to the ruins that she went through in Brazil, especially the open doors she keeps walking through. She goes through one door in North Brother Island, and you can kind of see her hold on to the side as she passes through. And she goes through two doors in Brazil, one that Leaf kind of helps her walk through, and then the last one that she eventually takes the picture in front of. Now, the picture is also interesting. After looking at the picture for a few days, the hand positioning of her right hand, how it faces down, kept itching at me the whole time. And after doing some more research on it, the picture has her hand doing, and I'm going to maybe butcher this a little bit, is a Varada Mudra. Varada Mudra, Varada refers to granting of wishes or boons, and Mudra refers to hand, seal, or gesture. The open hand with the fingers pointed to the ground represents supreme power and is ready to grant a wish or bestow blessings to the believer. Its resultant effect is getting a wish fulfilled, hence the name. It signifies generous feelings like charity, compassion, and sincerity, and therefore also known as a generous gesture, and that's translated into favorable mudra. We see these different hand positions, and Varada Mudra is not just one hand position that Emma's doing, but it's a whole bunch of different gestures that mean different things. And in Buddhism and Hinduism, you would see different hand positions done by different gods to mean and grant different things. In this particular example, the statue of Tara, who is the mother of liberation of females and is a female Buddha, you can see her doing a very similar position. Granted, the left hand is not in the same position as Emma's, and that could have very well just been for TV and what they had to do. But the left hand pointed down in the Varada Mudra positioning she's doing is pretty identical, and the mother of liberation of females ties to the show's overarching theme that women are kind of being repressed and they're taking away their light. In the beginning of the episode, the narrator of the show even brings that up by saying the power that women have, and he goes through his little speech. So I thought when I saw this, and it was kind of itching at me for the past couple of days, and came across this, that it was kind of an interesting comparison between the picture and the statues that we see, because the hand positioning seemed a lot more deliberate than just hanging your hand. No one would actually stand like that for a photo unless they were trying to symbolize something. So now let's go over the additional lore that was introduced in this episode. Emma is essentially Alice in Wonderland. The whole episode had an Alice in Wonderland base. And this was made pretty obvious by Cal reading the book to the children in the courtyard, and the passage she had brought up, or at least the part of the book she had gotten to at that point, was the conversation between the caterpillar and Alice, and talking about how Alice doesn't really know who she is anymore, and she remembers her old self, but she's just changed so much in this journey, in this quest, that she just doesn't really know who she is anymore. And this obviously relates to Emma, this idea of like a caterpillar kind of turning into a butterfly, this growth, this coming into the person that you want to be. And it also alludes back to episode 3, after Emma has kind of her final, or one of her final breakdowns, and Apollo comes in to talk to her about it, and she tells him that she needs to find her way back to herself. And this, from that scene to now, and definitely by the end of this episode, with the blue aura that we had talked about earlier in this episode, she's clearly on the way to finding her true self. Whether or not that's exactly what Kim had showed us, or her history is totally different, we're definitely seeing the growth of Emma in this episode, and her turning into the person that she's supposed to turn into. But to be more specific in the lore that we're seeing, we watch Emma literally go down the rabbit hole, right? She goes into the tunnel, which is super symbolic of Alice looking down into the rabbit hole. And then, like in multiple other scenes we've seen in the show, we get like an almost total 360 turn, that she's going into this other world, that she's transferring over into this other realm. And we meet Wheels, which, as far as I can tell, is supposed to be the Mad Hatter. He's obviously a little kooky, and he's a super fun character. He's got his fun hat. He's tearing it up in his little shopping cart thing. And then when he gets back to his trailer, which is as Mad Hattery as you could imagine, he has a tea party, and it's pretty reminiscent of the scene in the animated version, in the Johnny Depp version, where the Mad Hatter is pouring her tea and kind of rushing her with sugar and the whole deal. So we get a pretty good, comparison of the Mad Hatter. And then a side note that I think I noticed at the very end of the episode, as Cal had asked her, what happens if you don't find him, as in Brian, and she kind of gives the off with your head gesture, the she'd kill herself, as she did tell Apollo in the restaurant a couple episodes earlier, that if Brian dies, she dies too. There was an off with your head reference, at least to me, that she makes there, which is a reference to what the Queen of Hearts says to Alice in the Alice in Wonderland story. So let's get back to Wheels for a second, the Mad Hatter, because he helps Emma get all through the subway and over to the A train so she can get back to the city safely. But he doesn't do it for free. He asks for a very specific form of payment. He asks for a book, The Travels of Pedro de Cieza de Leon, Volume 1. Cieza de Leon participated in multiple expeditions, and this particular book chronicles his expeditions in Peru. So my mind immediately went to The Gate of the Gods, which I have seen on different History Channel shows for a long time. It's actually called Aramu Maru, and it's an abandoned stone carving in Peru near Lake Titicaca. It's known as the Gate of the Gods. It's a flat stone carving with a door-like structure in it, in like a T-shaped niche. And legend has it is that during a hostile attack from conquistadors, remember Cieza de Leon being from Spain, an Incan priest who was in possession of a golden sun disk that supposedly fell from the sky, Apollo being the sun god, places the disc in the depression in the door, causing a portal which emanates blue light, which we just saw Emma do, to open. During that time, Aruma Maru, the priest, enters and is never seen again. Now, there are other examples of these sort of structures with possible portal doors, one being in Bolivia called the Gate of the Sun, which looks a lot like the doors that Emma's been going through in these different ruins, whether it be in North Brother Island or whether it be in Brazil. So I'm just going to wind down the episode by reading off a couple different things that I found interesting, and maybe you know about them, maybe you don't. Thing number one is when Emma went back to New York, she saw a news story about her own situation, and the reporter had mentioned that Apollo had gone to intensive care, that he was pretty beat up after the attack. And her response to that was to kind of under her breath say, "No one short of a God."
Pablo was rushed to intensive care after he was found with extensive injuries.
No one short of a God.
Police are examining
Which immediately took me back to when kindergarten got to North Brother Island, and Cal had found out who he was after seeing Greta's picture in the phone, and just put a whooping on kindergarten. I mean, just took it to him. And he got back into his jail cell, and Apollo's first thought is, and he says, "How are you still alive?"
Well, at least I got my glasses back.
How are you not dead, man?
And Kindergarten seemed pretty okay after taking that kind of a whooping. It was reminiscent of when Emma said that, because Apollo got hit in the face with a hammer. He was hanging on that pole. I don't know how he didn't suffocate with that bike lock around his neck. All these different injuries that have happened to him, and he seemed to come through, no big deal. It lends a little more credence to the fact that what most of us already think, Apollo is at least some sort of not human. Whether or not he's fully inhuman, or he's some sort of deity or not, is up for debate. But that statement and the fact that he was able to find North Brother Island and go there lends a little more credence to the fact that we're probably dealing with Apollo as more than human. Something else that's interesting, and I have a post on there for this, is the Elk Hotel receipt that we see in the improbabilia box that Brian West leaves at the door. In the intro of the show, and I'm pretty sure on every intro, because I know they change, you'll see a part where the number 360 as a street sign pops up. It's in kind of red, and the rest of it's in that teal blue that is all over the show. Interestingly enough, the Elk Hotel, which is the receipt that we see in the improbabilia box, the name on the top of it is Lily Ann West, which is super similar to Lillian West, as if you wanted to, not be super, you wanted to kind of fake people out a little bit by putting a little bit of an alias. And on the receipt says that it was a whole night stay and that the person paid in full and in cash. And when I looked up the Elk Hotel, it was a pretty seedy old, pay by the hour kind of hotel that is no longer there. But when it was there, it was at 360 West 42nd Street. And 360 is the number that we see, and it's pretty predominant on the intro. So I just found it pretty interesting that we found this receipt. He held it. They made a point to show us. And then in the intro, you get the same address, or at least the same beginning part of the address as this hotel that Lillian potentially went to for whatever reason. Maybe it wasn't a seedy place in the show, or maybe it was, but somebody went there and they stayed the night and paid $75 in full. It also happened in January 1982. And in the very beginning of the episode, we see a trash can with the number 82 on it. I don't know if that means anything, but it's just worth noting. So I'm going to end it there. But before I do, make sure I do our question of the week. The question of the week is, why did Emma's dad go back in? To answer the question, leave a review on Spotify, drop a comment under this YouTube video, or find us at Twitter at crappy_reviews and let us know your answers. And while you're there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help grow the crappy community. If you've already done so, we really, really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Crappy Reviews with Chris. Rob will be back next week, and we'll catch you on the flippity flop.